It's just you and me today. The videographer is out at a wedding, but I wanted to talk to you about a sector that I have been investing a lot more in and how you can use this sector to perhaps diversify into emerging markets and make some money. This is one thing that we're going to be talking a lot about at Nomad Capitalist Live, emerging and frontier markets, how you can live there, how you can invest there, how you can profit off of their rise for now and over the next 10, 20, 50 years. If it's your first time here, I'm Andrew Henderson. We're hosting our annual event, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up in a matter of days. There are tickets left. Nomadcapitalist.com/live. Was just talking to Steve Wozniak the other night. We've got a lot of emerging markets investors coming from all around the world. Not so much are we going to talk about problems this year. There's a lot of problems in the world. The UK is taxing the hell out of everybody. Every day I open my email, I get 4 new stories about how the UK is falling apart. The US has problems. People are not doing so well there. We're not going to be talking about that. We're talking this year at Nomad Capitalist Live, and we're going to talk today about where the opportunities are. And so I'm going to talk to you about one sector that I've been investing more in myself. Fair warning, I'm not an investment advisor. This is not investment advice. Do your own research. But the sector that I have insight into, based on what we do here at Nomad Capitalist, is banks. And so I've been increasing my exposure to banks all around the world. And there's 3 or 4 main reasons that I'm doing that, which we'll get to in a minute. I'm going to talk to you about the places where I'm buying these banks. The UK, one of the news stories, amidst all the new taxes and all the financial problems they have, people are leaving the UK in big numbers. But they wanted to talk about taxing banks. And so just, a matter of days ago, all the UK banks had big declines because the UK wants a windfall profits tax. And so if you're an investor in the UK right now in energy or in banking, you're in bad shape. The same way, if you're investing in the United States, or even if you just have the ire of the United States, there was one Mexican bank that the U.S. just basically put them out of business with sanctions. The U.S. is a very unstable place, in my opinion, to do business right now. And so, you know me, go where you're treated best. I invest in companies all around the world. And banks are one thing because we work with banks. We help our clients open bank accounts, get second passports, move overseas. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. I think a bit more than the average person about banks. One bank that I've done very well with, maybe it's too late to buy this one now, I don't know, is Bank of Georgia. I've been a happy customer of Bank of Georgia in the country of Georgia for some time. I saw a lot of my employees who are making more and more money, go into Bank of Georgia, and they've got American Express cards now, and they've got like Fast Track at the airport for the solo program people, and they've got lounges, and it's really becoming a more developed banking sector in Georgia. I got a couple of my employees buying, index funds and buying stocks in their Bank of Georgia account, and they're starting to save for their future. And so I bought Lion Financial Group about 2 years ago, and then I doubled down on it about a year ago. And the stock has basically doubled from each of those points. It's retreated a little bit recently, but still, I'm almost double my investment. It's not so much of a dividend stock anymore, but it was a great stock, and that was one that I have. I own a home in Georgia. I spend time there. I employ people there. I've been there for a long time. That's the kind of investment. It's very Peter Lynch in nature. The average person where I'm from in the United States would say, Bank of Georgia. First of all, is that a state? No. It's a country in the former Soviet Union. Oh, that's crazy. But I saw being on the ground, how much people like this bank and my own experience, which is why I tell you, you want to start doing things like opening an offshore bank account. One of the things is I'm increasingly looking for currency diversification. What's the big story this year? The US dollar has not held up very well against other currencies. You can put money in the Georgian lari in a term deposit, and if you put enough in there, they'll give you like 13%. And people say, oh, it's unstable. Listen, it could be unstable in the future. Certainly during COVID, it shot up, for example, but it's been pretty consistent around 2.7 to the dollar for the last year. You can get 13% on that. The Armenian dram, we had some people who got residence there. They bought the dram at 500 the dollar. Now it's pretty consistently in the high 300s per dollar, and you're getting 9 to 10% interest there. Azerbaijan next door as well. That's a bit more opaque, but we are looking more into that. You can buy Bank of Georgia stock, and Bank of Georgia, the Lion Financial Group, now owns Ameria Bank, um, depending on how you look at it, the first or second largest bank in Armenia. And so you can buy that stock on the London Stock Exchange, and it's denominated in pounds. And so, if you want the exposure to the bank, you buy the stock. If you want exposure to the Georgian lari currency, the DRAM currency, you open a term deposit in one of those banks. But let's look at, more broadly traded currencies. Two that I like is the Polish zloty. I think Poland is going to be an increasingly big success story by the early 2030s. You're already seeing, I mentioned the UK. I mean, people are leaving the UK, going back to Poland. People from within Europe are moving to Poland. I mean, it is a great success story. The other one's the Mexican peso. People thought when Trump was reelected, it was doomed. It's actually back up. And so in, those currencies, and in others, you can get currency diversification. And the currency that's been wobbly this year is the US dollar. My net worth is up just by holding assets denominated in euros, for example, whether it's a home or whether it's a stock. But a stock is something that you can buy with a brokerage account. You may not even have to go anywhere. But the more diversification you have, the more you're going to get these ideas. So I went on a search and I said to myself, JP Morgan Chase has been a great stock in the US. What a great bank stock that's been. I did own some for a while and I sold it. I said, who's the Jamie Dimon in Poland? And I did some research and I found who it was, and I bought that stock. And what's better about it is the yield on JP Morgan's down to like 2%, and before tax. The yield on Polish bank stock could be 8, 9, 10%. I'm happy to have the currency diversification. And I think that, my long-term play, I'm not a trader. I do sell stocks sometimes, but my play is mid to long-term holdings based on, where the puck is going. And so the same story in Mexico. There's some great niche banking plays in Mexico where you can get, even double-digit yield if you're a yield seeker. And I think, by the way, every entrepreneur should seek yield, because if you have money coming in that's just kind of delivered to your door, you don't need to take money out of your business. You can just reinvest the money in your business and not worry how much to take out to live on. But in both of those countries, you can get pretty close to 10% yields on a number of stocks. And people can say it's not stable, and yet, you consistently have lower PEs and higher yields outside of the United States. I mean, even some of the French banks, for example, have historically paid, pretty decent yields, although with a higher withholding tax drag. But in Poland, I mean, depending on where you live, you could pay as low as 5% withholding tax. In Mexico, it's 10% for everybody, and they don't penalize you if you're putting that in, let's say, an offshore trust or an offshore company. It's just a flat 10% rate for everybody. So by buying stocks overseas, and again, something that I know, buy what you know, Peter Lynch says, for example, currency diversification and yield. Also, to the point I made on the yield, depending on where you live, you can pay pretty low yields. I own stocks in Asia as well. But the point is, a lot of these places have very low tax. But if you live in, let's say, the United States or the UK or somewhere else with a residential or citizenship-based taxation system, they're just going to top up and make you pay the rest of what you owe. Whereas if you move, let's say, to Malaysia, where Nomad Capitalist Live is, that foreign income is not going to be taxed. And so rather than paying 15 or 20 or 25 or 30% on a dividend, you could potentially pay as little as 5% or even 0% on some of those Asian stocks. And so I have no incentive as a non-US taxpayer to own US dividend-paying companies because I'm hit with a 30% tax. That means even a relatively decent yield is not going to be that great compared to what I could get somewhere in Eastern Europe or in Asia, or the big one that we're going to be talking more about at Nomad Capitalist Live, which is Africa. And I'm planning trips in the next 6 to 9 months to both West and East Africa. East Africa more developed, West Africa more Wild West. I think there's more bargains in West Africa, but worse governance. And so I'm going to go and check out a few of these major markets because I think that's the next place to go. And I'm going to be telling you at Nomad Capitalist Live that, I told you 13 years ago about Cambodia and people laughed. Nobody's laughing who knows anything anymore. Everybody in Asia who's somebody is going in and building something in Cambodia these days. A lot of the banks here in Malaysia, they're all going there. Some of the retired bankers are going and opening their own banks. You've got people from Singapore, China, everybody's investing in Cambodia. So I'm looking for the next place. In some ways, I mean, the banks have incredible return on equity. Same as Bank of Georgia had really good return on equity. The banks in Africa, some of them have incredible return on equity, and yet banks aren't the only players. That's the one I'm looking to explore. But Poland, Mexico, Hong Kong, the Chinese companies have been great. Singapore banks have been great. And so, what I do in my business is, we work with, we've worked with hundreds of banks. I maintain a lot of accounts. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I had a better experience with one Singapore bank than the other. I bought that Singapore bank stock, and it's been the best performer so far. It's up about 60% for me in the last 2 years or so, with a better tax-free dividend yield that I would get by buying JP Morgan Chase. And so for that sleeve of my portfolio, that works. That makes sense for me. And so there may be a different sector that you're interested in. Utilities are interesting. You have some pretty good dividend utilities around the world. But for me, the main thing that you want to look at is, we've talked to you for years about getting bank accounts. And I understand if you're into Bitcoin, for example, you might think, why do I want to have too much money at a bank? But I had dinner last night with a former client. He's coming to the event, and he is talking about, yeah, I'm a Bitcoin guy, but I'm diversifying into other stuff, including real estate, and I am going to get some stocks. And so I like the idea, if you're going to have some stocks, why not diversify into different currencies, get higher interest rates effectively with the yield than you would by just putting money in an offshore bank, get the capital appreciation potential. And then when you're looking at that, what I always add, and what we're going to talk about at Nomad Capitalist Live, is use that as motivation. There's a psychological element to everything that we do. I always try and talk about that, here's the strategy. Every speech I give at the event, I always try and say, here's the strategy, but now let's talk a little bit about the psychology and what's going to actually make sure you get there. And the psychology here is, if you can lower your tax rate, if you set yourself up to where you're seeing the opportunity somewhere else, and you're seeing, hey, I already am paying more taxes than I have to on, let's say, a stock. If I move, instant savings, same as on my business. I think that's all motivation to continue to go where you're treated best. So takeaways: currency diversification, higher yields, lower tax on yield for someone like me who moves. So there's a very good, tax situation. Investigating West and East Africa, including banks there. I mean, incredibly high yielding banks. Again, some of that you have to look at the stability. I mean, you have incredible return on equity, for example, in the last year or two in Nigerian banks. Some of that's due to, the Naira and some of the currency fluctuations there. So you have to look just beyond some of the headlines. That's why I'm telling you, do your research. But Poland, that's no longer really debatable. I mean, everybody in Europe knows that Poland, whether they like Poland or not, I mean, Poland is going in a strong direction. And I mean, there's talk about how Poland is going to outpace, salaries in the UK. The UK is falling apart. And whether that's sad to see, it is sad to see. We had Nigel Farage last year. He and I don't agree on everything. The difference is Nigel Farage wants to stay and save it. And I don't know if it can be saved long term. You ought to just go where you're treated best. I think some of those UK banks, some of them they are dividend tax free generally, but to me, that seems a bit like a yield trap. I don't see where the growth is in the UK. I do see where the growth is in Poland. I do see where the growth is in Mexico. I'm not saying over the next year, although the peso, it's been okay. I think long term, Mexico continues to do well, Trump or no, because the one thing we're also going to be talking about is, look at the BRICS event this year. Look at the recent, stuff with China and Russia and North Korea. Even they're getting together. They're doing the military drills. Everybody's making friends in the global south. Malaysia's here in the global south. 75% of Malaysians prefer China over the U.S. You can not like their decision, but that's where they're going. And the bloc here in ASEAN is 10 countries, potentially 11 soon. And their general position is more towards China. And so, to me, the rest of the world is going to get together and continue to grow. They're going to pay you higher yields. They're going to give you a better tax deal. And if you are coming from the West, you ought to look into having some of your money in the banks, in the stocks, and I would argue eventually in real estate, whether it's investments or just lifestyle properties, as I have around the world, where you can enjoy yourself. And the most important thing I'm going to tell you at Nomad Capitalist Live is how you can be happier living this lifestyle. And I think that, your banks, your stocks, all this stuff kind of gets you on the path to potentially eventually moving overseas and being happier. In the meantime, if you can make more income, to me, that's a good way to diversify. And that's why, from my experience, I'm getting into those stocks, and you can either follow that lead by doing your own research, or you can buy different stocks that follow the same principles.